Hey, moneymakers, welcome back to another episode of Taking Stock. Post Hurricane Melissa, we weren't here last week because of the storm. We didn't have any power. It was in the heat of Melissa's landfall. I'm Kalila, and I'm pleased to be here with you for another episode of this amazing show. And I'm pleased that you are here with us because you are survivors. We are all survivors this week, this month, today. We're just happy to be here. We're happy for life. So we're bringing you all the latest business news as usual and telling you how it will affect you and your money. Tonight's show is primarily about Hurricane Melissa, the impact, the recovery, and all the things that will follow. I hope you are safe and that all of your families are safe. And like I said, we're just giving thanks for life. Now, Hurricane Melissa is definitely going down in the history books for many reasons. Some of the strongest wind speeds ever, some of the lowest pressure ever. Some scientists even talking about using it as the basis to establish a new Category 6 storm. And there's been a lot of chatter in the days following the hurricane. It's been, this time last week, today Tuesday, this time last week, we were in the thick of it with Hurricane Melissa. So the Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, addressed quite a few things in Parliament today. It was his first address to the nation since the passage of the storm. You know, he's been on the ground. We've been seeing him touring affected areas, but this was his first national address. And so we're going to be bringing you highlights from his address, telling you what we can expect, and I'll also give my reactions to what was said. And before we get started, as usual, I want to remind you to hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, and tell a friend that Taking Stock is on and live. And of course, let me know what part of Jamaica or what part of the world you are joining us from. I would say let's get this money. I guess I need to tweak that this week. Let's get this disaster relief money. It's been a tough week. Here's a look at what's hot in business. Jamaica Customs says it has temporarily removed import duty and GCT on specific goods to support Jamaica's Hurricane Melissa recovery efforts. The suspension went into effect on October 29 and will expire on November 28. According to Customs, during the relief period, importers will not be required to pay import duty or GCT on eligible items like tissue, wipes, cleaning products, mattresses, and non-perishable food. This applies to both individuals and organizations. Items imported before October 29th do not qualify. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Andrew Holness has reinforced a price freeze on retailers to combat price gouging following the passage of Hurricane Melissa. The order was made under the Disaster Risk Management Act. It prohibits price increases on food, water, medical supplies, building materials, and other key items. Violators face up to $1 million in fines. The PM said the measure was necessary to protect Jamaicans and ensure stability during the storm recovery. Tolls to use the island's major highways have been reinstated. Transport Minister Darrell Vaz made the announcement on Monday. The government had suspended tolls in the lead-up and immediate aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. CEO of Trans-Jamaican Highway Ivan Anderson told the Jamaica Observer that based on pre-hurricane traffic, the company lost an estimated $246,000 per day in toll revenue. Vaz indicated that while the suspension has been lifted, he is hopeful that toll operators will offer some discounts as aid continues to the most devastated parts of the country. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has announced the immediate suspension of energy agreements with Trinidad and Tobago. Venezuela had previously agreed to help Trinidad and Tobago develop its massive Dragon natural gas field, among other projects. Maduro has accused Trinidad of acting as the aircraft carrier for the U.S. empire. Trinidad has agreed to host U.S. troops as the Trump administration ramps up its fight against alleged drug activity in Venezuela. Trinidad Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar dismissed Venezuela's suspension, saying her country will continue to pursue its own energy and economic strategies. PayPal has inked a deal with OpenAI to have its digital wallet embedded into ChatGPT so users can pay for items found through the AI tool. The deal is expected to take effect in 2026. Once up and running, PayPal users will be able to buy items through ChatGPT, and PayPal merchants can sell on it. The move makes PayPal an early part of OpenAI's efforts to broaden ChatGPT's use for e-commerce. Users can also buy from Shopify, Etsy, and Walmart on ChatGPT. Welcome back. I want to remind our viewers that you can donate to Hurricane Melissa relief efforts using the government's official portal. You can also volunteer using that portal. The link is supportjamaica.gov.jm. supportjamaica.gov.jm. And now not only can you donate, but you can also register to volunteer using that very portal. And if you prefer a non-governmental organization, because not everybody's down with the government and has questions about how funds are being allocated, you can also check out Food for the Poor at foodforthepoorja.org. Food for the Poor has been doing stellar work in Jamaica for years in both housing and feeding people. So they do provide housing as well as distributing food and aid. So foodforthepoorja.org, or you can register with the government, donate to the government directly at supportjamaica.gov.jm. Jamaica needs all of your help right now, especially those of you abroad who are able to send whatever you can. Please do so. We need the help because trust me, it is an estimated 6 to 7 billion US dollars worth of damage. For comparison, Hurricane Beryl last year cost the country about 200 million. So that is 30 times worse than Hurricane Beryl. 30 times worse. Hurricane Beryl affected the economy for about 2 quarters, so about 6 months. We saw economic contraction. We saw, loss of productivity. We saw a spike in inflation. About 2 quarters, 6 months. Hurricane Melissa was 30 times worse than Hurricane Beryl. This is going to take us years to recover from. Now, we were trying to get the Prime Minister on the show tonight because we realized that it's been a week since the passage of Melissa, and he had not done any major interviews. And I had a whole lot of questions. It was looking hopeful for a while, but he did address Parliament today. And we understand he's very, very busy in a time like this. And given that he's addressed Parliament and has addressed and answered some of the questions that I had, we decided that, okay, we're going to bring you some of the highlights from that. And as we speak, that parliamentary meeting is still going on. So they're still going back and forth in the House as we speak. But here are some of the highlights from Prime Minister Andrew Holness's presentation today. One had to do with the hefty price tag.
Madam Speaker, detailed assessments are still underway, but I wish to share very preliminary, high-level estimates only to illustrate the scale of the devastation. Based on benchmarks from comparable regional disasters, physical damage to housing, commercial buildings, roads, electricity, water, and telecommunications infrastructure is estimated between 6 to 7 billion US dollars, equivalent to roughly 28 to 32% of last year's GDP, last fiscal year's GDP. It is, members, a major hit to our economy. And I want the country to appreciate that we have never had a disaster of this magnitude with this economic footprint in terms of the impact. Not Gilbert, not Ivan, all of those were relatively small to our GDP. To lose 30% of your GDP is significant.
So to put that in perspective, 30% of GDP is about 1/3. So 1 out of every $3 that Jamaica earns on a whole as a country has been wiped out. 1 out of every $3 has been wiped out. The Prime Minister said this was worse than Hurricane Gilbert in terms of percentage of GDP. These are staggering numbers. To further put this into perspective, 6 billion US dollars is about $1 trillion Jamaican dollars. That is about the amount that the government spends for the whole country in an entire year. That's about the amount of the national budget that the government spends to run the entire country during normal times for the entire year. And so if the damage caused is equal to the government's entire spending during normal times for the year, that means we need to double our income somehow. We need to make up twice what we usually make in order to pay for the repairs, for the damage, for the assistance, to rebuild housing, to fix all the roads, to clear the debris, and everything that we need to get done. But the challenge is that we have twice the expenses now, but our income is basically slashed by 1/3. And when you think about the industries and the areas that have been hit, agriculture has taken a huge hit. Tourism has taken a huge hit. Tourism is one of our 2 major sources of US dollars. And so with tourism taking a hit, what is going to happen to the dollar? Are we going to see a dollar slide? And with agriculture taking a hit, what is going to happen with inflation? We saw what happened last year after Beryl. Inflation spiked for 2 quarters. So we have inflation because of the hit to agriculture. We're going to have possibly a slide in the Jamaican dollar because of the hit to tourism. We also have the loss of productivity because of the increase in unemployment. And for those who are still employed, half the country now have no light. So many people can't work anyway, no light or internet or cellular service. And in today's modern age, most jobs require at least one of these 3 things: light, water, internet, data, cell phone service. So we are looking at a really, really bad situation right now. Let's go back to the Prime Minister. And by the way, he said the estimate conservatively is $6 to $7 billion. But we have heard some economists give estimates that are double that. So just yesterday morning, we were hearing, I don't remember who it was on one of the stations, putting the estimate between 10 and 14 billion US dollars, which is 50 to 75% of GDP. So 1 out of 2 of our dollars wiped out. And if we go on the high end at 75% of GDP, that's 3 out of 4 dollars produced by this country wiped out. So the Prime Minister also said that we need to expect slowdown in economic activity for the reasons I just mentioned. A lot of people are now going to be out of jobs, and those who do still have jobs don't have access to the infrastructure they need in order to complete those tasks. The PM said that the government will be handling the recovery in 4 phases.
Madam Speaker, as we move forward from the initial shock of Hurricane Melissa, the government's response is being guided by a clear, structured, and disciplined framework. We are pursuing recovery through 4 overlapping phases: immediate relief, emergency relief, stabilization, and recovery, and then long-term reconstruction and rebuilding. Each phase carries distinct priorities, but all share a single purpose: protecting the lives and dignity of our people and restoring our nation with greater resilience than before. The immediate relief phase began even before the hurricane had fully passed. In those critical hours, our priority was to safeguard life and maintain essential order. Search and rescue operations were initiated in affected communities as soon as it was safe to deploy teams. Emergency shelters continued to operate at scale, ensuring food, potable water, and medical services for displaced families. Our uniformed services secured critical infrastructure, while ODPEM, municipal disaster teams, and volunteers coordinated life-saving interventions. This phase focused on urgent humanitarian needs, clearing access routes for emergency response personnel, and stabilizing high-risk areas to prevent secondary loss of life. Then we entered the emergency relief phase, the phase in which we are now. This phase includes clearing and reopening primary road corridors, accelerating the restoration of power and water systems, and expanding mobile and community-level distribution of relief supplies. We have also mobilized medical outreach to shelters and affected districts, while ensuring psychosocial support for children, elderly persons, and vulnerable families. International humanitarian assistance, including airlifted supplies and technical teams, began to arrive and integrate with Jamaica's national response system during this stage. The central aim of this phase is to relieve suffering, reestablish safe access to communities, and stabilize essential services across the island. The next phase will be the stabilization and recovery phase, which focuses on helping families and businesses regain a sense of normalcy and restoring the foundations of daily life.
As Prime Minister Andrew Holness speaking in Parliament this afternoon, describing the 4 phases of the recovery, getting targeted support to small businesses and farmers, reopening schools, and reestablishing transportation systems and routes. Now, massive amounts of aid are going to be needed. As we know, a lot of people have lost their homes. We have multiple families begging lodging with those whose premises survived the storm. You see 3-4 families cramped into a single family home, and people are opening their homes to neighbors, which is great. But we also know, and I've been hearing that in St. Elizabeth this week, the past few days, it's been raining a lot. And so one of the urgent needs is shelter. The Prime Minister said that they're going to be launching, or they have launched, the Building Support Program.
In terms of housing support, Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, across the island, our first priority has been to deliver food, water, and medical support to every affected community. But we know that beyond these essentials, the greatest need is now shelter. Too many of our brothers and sisters have lost the very roofs over their heads. To address this urgent need, I am announcing a building support program for households in the most affected parishes as follows, and this will be an MP-driven program again. St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Manchester, Hanover, St. James, Trelawney. $10 million will be allocated to each constituency in those parishes.
Okay, so 10 million really does not sound like a lot, but I guess this is the start. So St. Elizabeth, Hanover, St. James, Westmoreland, Manchester, Trelawney get 10 million. Additionally, constituencies in St. Anne and Clarendon are going to get 5 million each, while other constituencies across the island will get 3 million each to assist with relief and rebuilding efforts. There were also some announcements about the role of the NHT in all of this. So NHT is going to be instituting a 6-month moratorium on mortgage payments for persons in the worst affected parishes, including Hanover, St. James, St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Trelawney, Manchester, and St. Anne. They're also going to be extending a special home improvement loan of up to $3.5 million at an interest rate of just 2%, available to both existing mortgagors and contributors who need to repair and rebuild their homes. In addition, there's going to be a special grant of $500,000. Note what I said, grant, which is free money. $500,000 grant to contributors whose homes or the homes of their immediate family members were damaged by the hurricane. Immediate family means mother, father, brother, sister. That's immediate family. And that grant will be awarded based on the need, and that need would have to be verified, and also the level of the damage sustained. So $500,000, it can go a long way in helping. Let's say maybe your roof got blown away, in helping to repair the roof and helping to make some of those repairs that are necessary. So that's a grant from the NHT for people who qualify, people who need it, in addition to additional loan financing operations, in addition to a freeze on mortgage payments for people in the worst affected parishes. Now, the PM has said that he's instructed JPS to try and put as much of the grid underground as possible. Interesting point.
With regard to electricity, restoration of power is proceeding in phases, prioritizing hospitals, water plants, communication backbones, and dense residential zones. The all clear for restoration of utility services enable JPS and independent contractors to enter the field at scale, while the ministry with responsibility for energy is coordinating grid stabilization and resolving localized issues such as low voltage and restored feeders. Yesterday, the JPS would have given an update on the status of electricity restoration. The government has given them strategic direction to make a priority to restore large commercial and urban centers in addition to critical public facilities. Moreover, they have been tasked in their grid restoration efforts to explore relocating, where feasible, the grid underground. We have given them directives regarding Montego Bay, the Elegant Corridor, and the Hip Strip would be two areas where focus should be given to put the grid underground. If other areas are feasible, going underground is expensive. So we have to balance between expense and getting the grid up. But if we are getting the grid up and we can get some resilience in it, then we have to get the resilience in. So we will balance as we can, but it wouldn't be possible for all the grid that we have to put back up to put it underground. But in areas where it makes strategic sense, then we are encouraging them and indeed directing them to ensure that that is done.
Interesting. I say that's interesting because you may recall the residents of Hope Pastures have been in a years-long battle with JPS, a legal battle with JPS, to get them to maintain the underground grid and to replace the elements that have been eroded. They've been going back and forth in court. The Supreme Court ruled against them and in favor of JPS. It went to the Court of Appeal. It went all the way to the Privy Council, I believe. And right now it's still in some appeals process where the residents have been really pushing for JPS to put this grid or maintain this grid underground. JPS has refused and they have fought tooth and nail. And now we have the Prime Minister saying, JPS, listen, we need you to put at least parts of the grid underground to build resilience into that. It's going to take a lot of money. Who is going to pay for it? That is the question. I'm going to take your comments after the break. I realize I didn't do my shout outs at the beginning of this segment, but I see some comments coming in. I want to get to the comments. Right now, though, we have our poll question of the week. Here is your question. Do you think the government is doing enough in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa? Do you think the government is doing enough in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa? A, yes, they're doing the best they can. B, no, people are hungry and dying. C, I need more time to see. Or other, leave a comment. Do you think the government is doing enough in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa? Yes, they're doing the best they can. No, people are hungry and dying. C, I need more time to see. Or other, leave a comment. You can take that poll over on Twitter or on YouTube community channel, community tab, or in tomorrow morning's email in What's Hot in Business email, or you can leave your comment in the chat. Do we have our break? Do we have our segment, Sash? Or do I just go straight into the next? We have it. All right, good. So here's your market recap.
Time now for your market recap, brought to you by MyMoneyJa.com, the official data partner of Money Media. Get 10% off your subscription with the code MONEYMISSION. The JSE Combined Index lost about 0.6% in October. That's 2,200 points. 129 stocks traded across the main and junior markets. 48 made gains, 70 lost value, and 11 stayed the same. 387 million shares changed hands on the Jamaican dollar market, valued at $1.9 billion. Now let's see who had October's biggest gains. Paramount Trading soared 76% to open November at $1.25. Cygnus Real Estate Finance USD gained 26.5% to start the month at 6 cents US. And Elite Diagnostic was October's third biggest gainer. The stock gained 26% to start the month at $1.89. On the losing side now, Margaritaville Turks USD was last month's biggest loser. It's down 23% to open November at $11.57 US. Pulse fell 27% to open the new month at $1.11. And MPC Caribbean Clean Energy was down 17% to open at $41.60. Over on the Trinidad and Tobago Stock Exchange, the composite index lost 25 points in October. That's about 2.5%. NCBFG was the most traded stock of the month. It opened November at $1.75 TT. Angostura Holdings was the TTSE's biggest gainer, up 18%. It opened the new month at $13 TT. On the losing side, One Caribbean Media was October's biggest loser, down 20%. Over in the U.S., the Dow Jones was up 1%, while the S&P 500 gained 2%, and the Nasdaq climbed nearly 5%. At the pumps in October, the price of 87 gas fell $8.19, while 90 dropped $8.62. Meanwhile, the cost of diesel dipped $7.16, and low sulfur diesel lost $7.54. In foreign exchange trading, the JMD lost 16 cents against the US dollar in October, closing the month at an average $161.46 to 1 US. On the other hand, Jamaica's currency strengthened against the Canadian and the pound. The JMD closed the month at $113.56 for the Canadian dollar and $213.99 for the pound. The JMD lost $1.47 on the euro. Finally, on the crypto markets, Bitcoin prices fell 10% in the last 30 days, trading at $107,329 US dollars on Monday. Meanwhile, Ethereum prices dropped 22%, trading at $3,654 US dollars on Monday. Market Recap was brought to you by MyMoneyJa, the official data partner of Money Media. Subscribe to my newsletter for money news like this straight to your inbox. Go to getmoneynews.com to sign up. The link is in my bio. Let's get this money.
This segment of Taking Stock, The Analyst, is brought to you by JMMB Group, your best interest at heart.
The views expressed in this segment are not necessarily the views of Money Media. This information is for educational purposes only and is not intended as financial advice. Please consult a licensed financial advisor before making any investment decisions.
Welcome back. Let's take some of your comments before I introduce our guest. We have Basilio, who says, I missed the show last week. Glad you're back this week. Speedy recovery for the whole island. Garfield is saying good night from Spanish Town. Nana Sense is far, far away. Lucky for you being far, far away from Melissa. Ingrid is checking in from Bull Bay, St. Andrew. Learn, Grow, Invest community saying good evening to everyone and sending prayers out to everyone expecting to hear from family and loved ones as well. We have Dwight in Spanish Town hoping for the best after this hurricane the other day. Raquel saying good night to the money makers and reminding you to like, share, and subscribe while we wait. While you were waiting on the start. Raquel asking, how are the money makers? I'm hopeful and blessed that we will rebuild after. Mickey is joining us from Portmore City. Raquel says we're under Melissa, so we're better this week. So half of the country can't watch us tonight, or possibly more than half, because of still no light, no internet, no communication service. Learn, Grow, Invest is in Kingston. We've got Javon, who says he's marked safe from Melissa. Hope you guys are too. What's happening with dollar bond IPO? We covered it before Melissa. I think we were making plans to cover it around that week, around last week, and then Melissa just come and took over the entire news cycle. Orville is joining from St. Elizabeth. Orville, you're on Starlink. Joining from St. Elizabeth. Lucky you. Yeah, we definitely hope that you're okay. He says the weather is fine. Nice. All right, and we have Earl in Helsha. Good to see you on, Earl. Good to see everybody on from around the country and, of course, around the world. So our guest this evening is somebody who has always been supportive of this program, always active in the comments, and was supposed to join us last week for Taking Stock's 6th birthday. We actually turned 6 years old on October 29th. Can you believe we started the show in 2019? We're now in 2025. Let's welcome Jermaine McDonald, financial coach and co-founder of Learn, Grow, Invest. Welcome, Jermaine.
Thanks for having me, Kalila, and happy birthday.
Thank you, and thanks for coming on. So we have a lot to discuss in the post-Melissa recovery. We saw the clips from the Prime Minister just now, but first, let me just get your initial thoughts on, how, first of all, everybody your side okay? How are your family?
Well,
how is everybody doing?
Everybody in Kingston is okay. The thing that, for me, I do have a large family in terms of relatives, cousins, etc. I'm not sure how they are doing yet. I have family in St. Elizabeth. I haven't heard from them yet. But in Kingston, we're okay. Just water damage and some minor repairs that we'll need to do, but for the most part, we're okay.
So we were talking on Twitter, I think today or yesterday.
Yesterday.
The days are just all a blur right now about, the economic impact, the far-reaching impact of Hurricane Melissa. And then we heard the Prime Minister come in with some numbers. But what were your initial thoughts following just the initial shock? I mean, we were all shocked. We've all been seeing the images. But when you started thinking about it from a financial and economic impact perspective, what are some of the things that crossed your mind?
Well, the first thing I'll say is that I'm not sure any of us could have anticipated the extent to which the damages are. I mean, the rainfall we had in Kingston, there was wind, etc. And I mean, I knew that it would be impactful based on the category and all of that. But when I first saw some of these images, I was waiting to see whether or not they were AI or not, because I just couldn't believe that it was that bad. And the more I kept seeing it, I was like, well, these clearly aren't fake. And then it was just, it was really hard. And one of the things that a lot of persons I know I've spoken to have experienced, there's this term that I learned recently called survivor's guilt, where you feel so guilty that nothing happened to you, or not to the extent that it happened to those affected, that you just don't know how to function. You feel guilty, you feel angry, you feel you're grieving essentially, even for those who didn't have any family or friends that were impacted. And I know that these things happen all across the world all the time, but it's different when it's literally right next door. It's different when it's persons who, it's places where you visited, it's places where you have family, it's places now that it's the fact that it's going to impact just everything. Like our very way of living is going to be different from this point on. And so that was the initial kind of weight that I felt. When I did started to think about, I mean, the first things we did was try to check in on our community members to see how everybody was doing. When we sent out our email, we noticed that about 10% of persons who normally responded. So most of our community members are probably still without email or internet access. So we haven't really heard from everybody in terms of our community as yet. I started to think about the impact in terms of the economy and then about our investments, right? Because those two are directly related. So the first thing I thought about was the fact that we're going to be rebuilding potentially for about, my estimate is maybe up to 10 years, right? Because the sheer construction, right? There are roadways that need to be cleared, but things are kind of being moved to the side just to clear a path for cars and vehicles to travel. But there's no real repair that's taking place right now. Once we get persons fed and sheltered, then there'll be the place of prioritizing what will get repaired first. The Prime Minister said it, hospitals and places like that. And then that may take just a few months to keep up with everybody that's coming in little by little. Then you'll have to start to plan how we start repairing infrastructure, how we start repairing the roadways, how we start repairing the essential services that are supplementing the core ones, right? So gas stations would need to be repaired. I heard there was a JPS substation that was destroyed. So things like that we need to rebuild to support all the other things that come, right? So businesses were damaged. That would mean loss of income. Schools were damaged, as not just public schools, private schools, institutions. We don't know if any listed companies were impacted. We assume the ones like Spur Tree may be related because that's kind of like farming, maybe. But it's just so much to think about, right? In terms of the overall impact. On the investing side, I would say I started to think about which stocks would start to do well in the next 10 years. Because again, my mindset is the next 10 years, really.
Let's stick a pin there, because I do want to come to that for sure. But you touched on the survivor's guilt, and it's something that I can tell you I have been experiencing for the past week. Because for us here in Kingston, no damage, just minor leak in the bathroom. That was the extent of it. And then in Mandeville, property had minor damage as well, especially in the grand scheme of things compared to what other people have endured. And so on Sunday, I took my kids to a restaurant to go eat. And then I felt guilty about taking them to a restaurant to go eat. I was sitting
because
there
it feels like a luxury now.
I was sitting there thinking, look at us eating in a fancy restaurant when some people have no food.
Yeah,
I should have donated this money, and I was there chastising myself. And then Monday morning, I took them to school. School started here in the corporate area for many schools on Monday. I took them to school and I said, look at us going to school like nothing happened, when so many other students, children don't even have a school anymore because the school has been destroyed by the hurricane. And then after I dropped them to school, I went to the gym and I'm there working out. I'm like, look at me working out when I should be using my energy to help rebuild and clear roads and volunteer and don't. Yeah. It was just every little thing was triggering me and making me feel guilty. And then I heard a perspective from Rush Cam. I'm like, okay, this is a good way to kind of reframe that conversation, because such a large portion of the country, there is very little economic activity going on right now. For those who still have jobs, they don't have light, they don't have internet, they cannot do it. And many businesses have been destroyed completely. And then the businesses that do exist, people now have no money to spend because they've lost everything. And so the rest of the country that has been so devastated is going to be depending on the economic power of Kingston, the spending power of us here.
Yeah, the taxes collected from Kingston.
Taxes collected to boost the economy. So all the people who have jobs in Kingston, who are employed, so even if you're spending on a luxury like going to a restaurant, you're supporting that business, which in turn pays their employees, who may in turn be helping their family in Westmoreland and Trelawney and wherever they are. And I thought that was a really good way to kind of reframe that conversation and that survivor's guilt that many of us are feeling. So even if we're not directly contributing, there are indirect ways of helping just by resuming normal economic activity here where we can.
Yeah, so I'll say you definitely want to contribute in some way, shape, or form, because that part is important, meaning
it is.
I know there are concerns about how funds will be used, etc., but there are so many channels to give back. I'd find some way to. I think though it's important to understand how it all works, right? And what I thought about that may work is that you have a lot of persons who are young, who are strong, who are maybe unemployed in the other parishes that could be put to work maybe through a volunteer program or something like that, that could aid in terms of the day-to-day support that may be needed, because maybe those persons were looking for work anyway. And so maybe there's some way to channel resources in that way, but it wouldn't be necessarily productive for us to be able to, the things that you mentioned, the gym, etc., those are things that allow you to function in terms of what you do in terms of KRM, taking stock, etc. So
your mental health at
exactly.
A time like this.
So that's going to be important. But I think, and one of the things that we discussed in our church is that the thing that you're feeling, redirect it into something that is actually productive in terms of aiding to the recovery, right? So guilt is not productive in any way, right? So think about it, appreciate the mercies and the blessings that you have. Look to see how you can help, but just understand that you're going to need to function, right? Because when my impulse, and my wife who's probably watching this, I was like, let's just give everything we can, all we can. But then, she's like, well, what about our staff that we'll need to pay in 30 days? Because I'm also thinking about the business impact for us, right? Our industry relies a lot on the stock market. If there's not the same activity, how would that fare for us? How do we contend with higher costs that we know are coming? Things like that. So it's a balance, but I think we should contribute in some way, shape, or form, but also understand that some amount of normalcy is going to be important for us to not all just grind to a halt.
Yeah, and if you can't give money, give your time. And
Exactly.
The thing is as well, so another reason I was feeling guilty is that, okay, I hadn't volunteered yet, right? Because I have the kids and there's nobody to watch the kids. My helper house she lost her roof.
Yeah.
And then I realized, listen, these people are going to need help for weeks and months on end. And right now, in the immediate aftermath, there is going to be this influx of people who want to volunteer. Everybody wants to volunteer. Everybody wants to go down St. Elizabeth. Everybody wants to go Westmoreland and all these places. And in a couple months, you won't see the same level of volunteerism, the same level of energy as people start getting back to their normal lives. And I just want to remind people that there will still be the need for volunteers for months and possibly years, as Jermaine said, to come. So if you're unable to do so, no, don't feel bad. There's going to be countless opportunities. There's going to be a long period of time where your help will still be needed.
Yeah, it's more about sharing the load. It's like saying too many cooks, right? If you have too many persons trying to do the same thing in the same area at the same time, which is why, one of the things I'm hoping for is greater visibility as to the scope to which we've been taking on the recovery and relief, right? So for example, which areas have not been visited yet, which persons maybe have not been accounted for yet. It would be good to know this information so that persons know where to go, because there are persons who want to help, who have the resources and availability, but they don't know where to go. Persons are also kind of questioning where is safe to go, because we've also heard some stories of persons who are being taken advantage of in terms of as they're going to offer help. So some sort of coordination in that way would be helpful from a country level, so that we know how to channel our desire to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you mentioned earlier, and I told you to stick a pin in your thoughts about the stock market and the long-term outlook. What were you going to say there?
So I'll say it in two ways. So in the short term, I think that you're going to see stocks that are in industries like construction or medical, fixtures, plumbing, hardware, and manufacturing stocks. I think those are the ones to watch in the short term. I've already seen some stocks up 40% in the last three trading days. Some are up 20%, 10%, etc.
Which ones are those?
Well, Atlantic Hardware has been doing especially well. So they've recovered to above IPO price now. I think they ended the day at maybe 128, 129. They were trading around 88 cents before the market reopened. Now they're at $1.30. There's also Lumber, because there's a relationship between the two. So Lumber, if you look at the sell queue for Lumber, I think there are only 3 or 4 orders to sell, right? So not many persons are selling there. There's also stocks that on the other side now that have been growing throughout the year, that investors have been taking profit from to reinvest in those companies that they think are going to be doing well now. So we saw Jamaica that was at $4.24 come down to actually below $4. And I think that was, based on a whole total conversation, which I'm not sure we'll have time to talk about, but you can let me know there. And then RPL, who was somewhere almost at 470, we're seeing now below to maybe about 370 thereabouts. So
Regency Petroleum. They're based in Sav, right?
Yes, so they're gonna reopen tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we're trying to reach the CEO for a couple of days because we weren't sure if he was okay. Because we do earnings calls with them, but Monday he responded to say, they're okay. He's again just highlighting the extent to which things were damaged. He's in Kingston temporarily, so he had light and so to be able to respond to us. So I saw on their social media that they're going to reopen tomorrow.
That's good to know. And then for the long-term outlook, you said you're looking at 10 years to rebuild.
Yes. So to me, in terms of, I think that there are industries that aren't being considered right now that are going to play a big part. That we're not talking about services like agriculture or even animals, right? I saw somebody share a video of all of their goats that would have died from the storm. So there's going to be some challenges there. So I think because there's such a focus on just relief right now, we haven't really begun to see, and there's still some amount of shock. We haven't really fully considered the impact to all of the industries that are at play here. So we are pretty much, I think, living from what we would have already had, because most of us who work 9 to 5 got a salary a week or two ago. At the end of this month, we're going to see higher costs, which is going to impact our ability to do things long term. So things that we consider luxuries in the medium term, like let's say that I wanted to do some renovations on my house, that may be delayed. So though I think there'll be a boom in some industries, I think there'll be a slowdown in quite a bit. tourism is one of them while we try to rebuild, because there are some persons who are, for example, feeling like they should be staying away from Jamaica. But I saw Throp on his live stream saying, persons should be coming to Jamaica now because we need those resources to be able to invest back into relief. So some persons may be staying away from the country, which will impact the tourism sector. Transportation sector may be impacted because I saw Knutsford Express trade down as well, because persons may be thinking maybe they don't have the same accessibility to certain areas, so that may impact their revenues. So we may need like a dedicated show to just talk about the extent of the impact that I'm seeing in the medium to long term. But what I do think is that as an investor, you should certainly be, if you're not investing for the long term, you should be rebalancing right now. And in the medium term, you should be thinking now, I think, with a 3-year outlook, because even those companies that are doing well now, you're not necessarily going to see immediate impact on their financials. The next set of financials we'll get will be Q3, which is end of September. That's before the hurricane. And then the Q4 numbers aren't coming out until February. So even though some stocks are gaining now, you're not really going to see the impact of those numbers in terms of what they could potentially do until sometime next year, maybe Q3, Q2 to Q3. So I think there'll be an initial run up, some amount of correction and profit taking. And then when we start to see the impact of some of these companies bearing what I think are going to be some significant losses, the market may pull back a little and then just start to rebuild slowly from there.
As you mentioned, Throp earlier, Winthrop Wellington, a hotelier based out in Negril, Jamaican returning resident, basically. Yeah. And he's been providing stellar service, giving us updates. Daily updates from Negril. He has an investment conference coming up later this month, November 16th to 19th, I believe. I'm actually going to be a part of that. And I assumed that he would have canceled or postponed the event, but that event is actually still happening. He's still having the event. So when I spoke to him, I reached out to him a few days ago to ask him, what's going on at the event? Are you going to postpone? He said, no. He said, everybody who's been involved wants to go ahead with the event, primarily because that event targets Jamaicans who want to relocate back home or who want to invest back home. So you have a lot of Jamaicans in the diaspora who come down specifically for that event, and they still want to come. And I can understand that urge to want to come, and we need them to come more than ever now. So just so you guys know, that conference is still happening in Negril in a couple of weeks.
It's certainly worth it. Throp is very invested in the region. He does weekly live streams just showing around Negril. He's always been pro Jamaica. And I do think we have a great opportunity to get significant financial support from the diaspora. So I think platforms like his is likely going to grow as a result of this, because he's been just so consistent in terms of giving updates. And I'm sure if he's able to get the right partnerships that I know he's looking for, we'll be able to funnel those resources in a meaningful way. Because all of his service in terms of content has always been to build up the country. So I think it's a perfect time for his platform to get more attention.
Yeah. And for those of you who are interested, you're looking for an opportunity to come, you don't know where to channel whatever it is you want to do.
Exactly.
The website is thropx.com, thropx.com. I just posted it in the chat. Thropx, yeah, that's it, thropx.com. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your perspective, Jermaine. We need to collaborate some more for sure. We were supposed to do a collaboration before all of this, and here we are now. But we'll do some more work together soon.
All right, sure.
All right, that's Jermaine McDonald from Learn, Grow, Invest. Check out their YouTube channel. I believe their channel is called Learn, Grow, Invest Community. If not, just type it in the search and you'll find them. You can follow them all over social media as well. We'll take our final break and we'll have a little talk. I'll take your comments.
segment of Taking Stock, The Analysts, was brought to you by JMMB Group, your best interest at heart.
Beg you a favor now? If you've purchased the Money Mission workbook and you've read it already, you've done the exercises and you find it valuable, please leave me a review so that other people can know how valuable this little workbook is. Go to the link in my bio to leave a review. Thank you.
Taking your comments. Let's see. Basilio wants to know, will tourism bounce back? That is a real question. They will. It's not first storm. They will. I see some of the major resorts already putting a reopening date for the end of January. They're going to miss the height of the winter tourist season, but they'll eventually bounce back. Shell says, and the people are not paying taxes, yet they are online dictating what the government should do, as if they think those things come free. And Shells again, there are countless opportunities for work now. People just refuse to adjust. All these buildings will need to be rebuilt. Those workers will need food, breakfast, lunch, and even dinner. Cook shop need farm. Yeah, Shells, but people don't have money. A lot of people lost a lot of things. So yeah, there are opportunities, but who are in the immediate aftermath? Who are you really selling to? If people don't have anything, everything is gone. It's a tough situation, but we know a lot of aid is coming in, remittances are coming in, our diaspora is helping. And so, yeah, there are and there will be opportunities. Let's see who else we have. Or son, daughter. Yes, so when I said immediate family, mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter. Pick me. Parents, children, siblings. That's what immediate family is. Basilio says going underground will delay the recovery. Ingrid was responding to our poll question. So our poll question earlier was, do you think the government is doing enough in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa? Your options were A, yes, they're doing the best they can. B, no, people are hungry and dying. C, I need more time to see. So that was Ingrid's response. I need more time to see. Learn, Grow, Invest said, other, we need to know exactly what's happening for those possibly without a home right now. Shane says, if JPS can't put it underground, they need to be replaced with a company that can. Now, that reminds me of what Daryl Vaz was saying a couple months ago about JPS and the possibility of their license not being renewed. Will this play into that as well? Jamaica 278 saying good night from California. People need to be relocated who are homeless. Kish says the devastation is shocking. Earl says remember that we have to rebuild, so there will be a lot of activity to come. 11 Coco says survivor's guilt is a real thing. I'm feeling so guilty for reinvesting my dividends, thinking I should have just donated that free money. Now I'm buying stuff to send home. It's true. Raquel says, buy it in Jamaica to help the economy and keep jobs. Please don't run to Amazon for imports to increase. Remember, there may be a strain on the Jamaican dollar if we are buying abroad because we're losing all that revenue from tourism this winter season. Raquel says, buy through Sampars or any Jamaican business that has online sales to keep the people employed, as well as increase the demand, thereby allowing the local market to demand local labor. Kish says, one lady in St. Elizabeth had 200 chickens and lost everything, also her goats. I hear the egg farm mash up Chippenham eggs, and eggs were already scarce. Heading into Christmas now with no egg. Oh, it's going to be rough. Let's see, who else do we have? Raquel says, remember how many of us will survive into next year is depending on how we spend. Who else do we have? A few more comments here. Pablo says, I don't think ODPEM has the capability to rebuild villages and towns. We need international help, like the companies that rebuilt Iraq after the war. All right. Thank you guys so much for your input this evening. This was an important show and an important conversation to have. We are going to be continuing these conversations all over social media. Of course, my official platforms are at kalila.money on Instagram and TikTok, at Kalila Money on Twitter, and where else? At MoneyMediaJA on Instagram as well. Please, these are the official platforms, especially on Instagram and Facebook. Look for the verified check mark, because there are a lot of impersonators. And speaking of scammers, you also want to donate and volunteer through legitimate sites such as supportjamaica.gov.jm and foodforthepoorja.org, because the scammers are out there. They are ready to take your money. Can you imagine? The immigration website was cloned. Pika, what was it? I think it's visitjamaica.org. And there are clone websites for when you're trying to land and fill out your immigration form. I remember I was flying back to Jamaica one time, and the gentleman beside me said, "You have to pay to enter Jamaica?" I'm like, "No." And I looked at his phone, his device, and he was on one of the fraudulent websites that clone the official site, looks legitimate. You fill out all your information, you give your passport information, everything, and then it says you have to pay, I think it was like $35 US. I'm like, no, that is a fake site. If they can do that for immigration, imagine the scale at which the scamming is being attempted for Melissa relief. There are people who are looking actively to divert your hard-earned and well-intentioned dollars. So only give through verified platforms such as supportjamaica.gov.jm and foodforthepoorja.org. There are a few others as well, but make sure that you verify the legitimacy before you give your money. Make sure that the extensions like the .gov.jm, the .org are there, because there are others that are going to maybe put a dash in between, a hyphen in between. It's going to look a lot like the original site. Please be vigilant. Please be vigilant and give what you have, whether in cash, kind, or of your time. I'm Kalila. I will see you here again next week.